Now, cladding campaigners have vowed to fight on after MPs rejected attempts to shield leaseholders from fire safety costs. It follows a long-running parliamentary battle over who should pay to fix defects and faults, of course, following the Grenfell tyre blaze, which was nearly 4 years ago. Peers had repeatedly tried to stop the owners of blocks of flats from passing the costs on to leaseholders. Critics say the rug has been pulled out from homeowners. Well, Hayley Tillotson from Shipley went bankrupt after paying for extra safety measures at her flat, and we can speak to her this afternoon. Good afternoon, Hayley.
Hiya, you right?
Yeah, I'm all right, thank you. Not bad at all. So just give us your reaction to what's happened today, and put it in terms of how it's going to impact people who perhaps own leases in buildings that are affected.
I just think it's an absolute disgrace, to be honest. I think all day yesterday and today we've just been feeling anger and disbelief, desperation, and it's just going to completely ruin people's lives. We're not being dramatic. We're not being hysterical. This is serious. The bills are coming. They're landing on people's doorsteps now. This is happening now, today, this week, next week. And we just feel completely let down and hung out to dry, pretty much.
And what sort of, obviously it depends on which building perhaps someone lives and depends on their circumstances, but how much are we talking about here? What you mentioned, bills landing on people's doormats perhaps. How much are those bills likely to be?
Yes, so I used to own a flat in Leeds city centre, and I know that for my neighbours and for other similar blocks and buildings and flats nearby, the expected costs can range from 40 grand to 70 to 90 to 150,000 pounds. It is obscene. People just don't have this kind of money. Ordinary people don't have this money. I didn't. And it's, as well as being grossly unfair, because not only have we been conned and tricked and swindled into buying properties that we were told were safe, we did all the surveys, the solicitors check saying that yes, we're safe. So not only have we bought flats that are very dangerous, we've been told that we have to pay. And it's totally impractical. Just because Mr. Penthouse or the larger, nicer flats in a building might be able to pay, people like me on the ground floor don't have the cash. So what happens then? Do we take the whole lockdown with us? Do we delay things? If we go bankrupt, if all of them go bankrupt, start dropping like flies, what does that mean for the poor souls who are just waiting and trapped and stuck? It's really bad.
And when it comes to context, of course, everybody will remember the horrific events of Grenfell Tower and quite what happened there, and quite how many people lost their lives, of course. And as a result, just remind us how this came about, because I assume it was the case that at one point your building was considered safe, something changed, and suddenly we've got this sort of long-running track record of people facing huge bills like yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. Obviously, we all know what happened at Grenfell. It was absolutely horrific. And the fact is, the government just didn't do anything for years and years afterwards. So it was only in 2019 when they retrospectively changed the building regulations. And that is really when all of this chaos started. So by then, I bought in 2019. So I'd literally only just unpacked and all of this happened. But it's just, I think the government know exactly what they're doing. They've said that they'll pay for cladding because the government knows and we know that it's not just cladding, it's compartmentation, it's cavity barriers, it's fire breaks. It's my building, my flat, it met the building regulations and it was signed off that it did, but we found out that it hadn't at all. So the inspectors, the surveyors, they got it wrong. It wasn't safe. It never was safe. And my poor neighbours now are being hit with the bills.
And as well, Hayley, not just obviously the huge impact it's had on you and your personal life, your financial situation. Appreciate you sharing that with us because it's obviously deeply personal. But equally, I don't imagine that it's easy to spend your whole life fighting something like this and talking to people like me about cladding. That wasn't what your life was like when you bought your flat, and yet now I imagine it's taken over to some extent.
Oh, absolutely. It's just every waking moment, that is all you can think about, and it's horrific. And that's nothing compared to the campaign groups who have been absolutely amazing. Every waking hour they spend fighting for us. They're given the blood, sweat, and tears. Groups like Leeds Cladding Scandal, UK CAG, and End Our Cladding Scandal group, they're just absolute superheroes, but they shouldn't have to be. This could have been avoided. We didn't need to get where we are today. They could have saved us. They could have stepped in and sorted this out by now, but the MPs and the Lords and well, the Lords are on our side, but Tory MPs have just chosen to do this to us. They know exactly what they're doing. It's purpose and calculated. You can't pretend that they misunderstand. They know exactly what this means and what it will do to us.
What's the next step for you and your fellow campaigners, Hayley, or is there one? Is this it's obviously a significant blow to people like yourself, but is there anything else you can do next?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the fight continues. I mean, leaseholders, they've done everything right and done nothing wrong. So we're certainly not going to go away. We're not going to shut up and we're not going to let it go. The fire safety bill is obviously the latest blow, but we're going to keep fighting. And there's a building safety bill that we're now going to try and lobby and protest and try and make our voices heard. We can't give up. We're not going to lie down and roll over. And I just hope really that the general public listening will think about us cladding victims when time comes at the local elections.
And also, when it comes to your property in your flat, which it should be a hugely significant moment for people when you... was it your first time?
It was, yeah, our first time buyer on an affordable housing scheme. It was a huge deal for me to even get it. But thanks to all of this happening, it's just not only does it impact your finances, it ruins people's lives. So some of us can't have kids. If you're in a one-bedroom flat, you're stuck now. Yeah. Some of us have been forced out of those homes. So some people bought flats like I did, wanting to live there. They've been forced out to be accidental landlords because they simply cannot afford to live in the home that they bought. So that must be heartbreaking. You just plan your life, you do everything right, and then it's stuff like this that just completely derails you. And it's just completely could have been avoided. MPs could have stopped this, but they didn't.
Do you know what's become of your flat now, Hayley? Is it just sat there empty?
As far as I know, I'm bankrupt, and obviously the insolvency service is now dealing with the tatters of my pathetic life, really. I'm back at my dad's and I'm 29 now and I've got the finances of 19-year-old, really, and credit ratings in the toilet. And, it's just put on about 3 stone in weight. I've had a mental breakdown. I'm on some quite heavy medication now because I'm just completely ruined. And so this is it. I'm not unusual. I'm not, there's just hundreds of thousands of people all feeling like I feel, all desperate and on the verge of bankruptcy, if not bankrupt already. We're not being, like I say, we're not being dramatic, we're not exaggerating. This is it. This is the worst scandal that's happened to first-time buyers, I think, for a long while.
Well, Hayley, I appreciate you talking to us today and sharing the impact it's had on you. And of course, when it comes to not only your finances, but your own personal mental health as a result of as well. It's a deeply personal thing to share. So we really appreciate you doing that. And thank you for telling us about it from your perspective.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Cheers.
Hayley. Hayley Tillotson from Shipley there, because reacting to the news that cladding campaigners are vowing to fight on. It's after MPs rejected attempts to shield leaseholders from fire safety costs. It's all to do with cladding as a result of the Grenfell fire tragedy just coming up to 4 years ago. Hayley Tillotson there sharing it from her perspective on BBC Radio Leeds.